Good afternoon. Welcoming everybody who's joining us. My name is David-Michel Davies. I'm the Executive Director of the Webbies. Very excited to have two members of our Webby Award community here today to talk a little bit about social, a little about mobile, and a little bit about the intersection of social and mobile. So I hope everyone would join me in welcoming in the middle here Richard Ting, who is the Senior Vice President and Executive Creative Director at RGA, a perennial Webby Award winner, does lots of great work for Nike among many other brands and companies. Welcome, Richard. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. And also JEFF Moriarty, who is the VP of Digital Products at the Boston Globe. We'll talk a little bit about very ahead of the curve at the Boston Globe in terms of launching sites with responsive design and actually having done so a while back. So welcome, Jeff. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and of course I want to thank our sponsor and supporter here at our Hangout, Vitamin T, who's been sponsoring our sort of series of content exploring interesting parts of the internet called Webby Connect, so thanks Vitamin T. So let's get started. I thought maybe what we do is just chat a little bit with both of you about what you're working on now, and then I have some questions about some of the projects you did, and we can sort of just keep it pretty informal. Richard, I think I think a lot of the work that you guys have done for, I would say, Nike in the past year or two, but it's really been like probably 10 years, if not longer, going all the way back to sort of the beginnings of Nike Plus. But are the most well-known, or some of the most well-known stuff that you've been working on. But tell us about what you're doing now and what you're excited about.
Yeah. So like you mentioned before, we have plenty of other clients aside from Nike. We work very closely with Microsoft, MasterCard, and some other large clients. I think in terms of what we're focusing on these days, from my standpoint, I really oversee a lot of the mobile and social efforts that are happening across the agency. I think recently there's been a huge push within the responsive web world, and Jeff will probably talk a little bit more in detail about that when he talks about his Boston Globe work. But in terms of how brands are moving into the responsive world, they really see it as a huge necessity to get their content in a format that is accessible across all these various touch points. And we recently actually launched a responsive site for L'Oreal Paris. So that site is up and running, it's live. But for the most part, if you're a brand these days and you're looking to revamp your website, you really have to think about revamping the website in a way where it's responsive, just because as consumers are shifting into a behavior where they're spending more time on their smartphones, we just need to make sure that our brands are delivering their content in a way that the user experience is not impacted in a negative way. So we have to make sure it works across all these touch points. So response is a big thing for us. I think on the native application side, we're still moving forward with quite a few native applications, both on the iOS and Android side. I've read all the articles in the trade magazines about how a lot of people feel HTML5 will begin to rise and native applications will eventually start to fade away. I haven't seen any of that. I still think there's a huge amount of demand and appetite for native applications. So we're still moving forward very aggressively on the native application side. On the social side, at this point, we're probably about 2 to 3 years into the social marketing side of things for our clients. Most of our clients have fairly robust social marketing programs in place. I think the big challenge these days is how do we start incorporating better content strategy into these social marketing programs and ensuring the social programs connect back into what's happening in the other channels. So without getting into too much detail, that's essentially what I've been focused on the last few months.
Interesting. We'll definitely come back to some of that, and I'd love to dive a little bit more into, especially how you're seeing social integrations working either across the responsive sites or apps or both, and sort of limitations on that. But Jeff, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in Boston Globe.
Sure. So as you talked about, we ventured down the path of launching BostonGlobe.com as a responsive website. We did that about 2 years ago, and the goal the goal there was really to build a site that had maximum accessibility across all screens and all devices, and just believing that the number of screen sizes and devices people would want news and information on was just going to continue to grow. So we started off about 2.5 years ago mapping this out, and then we built bostonglobe.com, which was a new site that was going to be a subscriber-only website. And we just built out the site that worked across really every screen size. We had someone who actually called it up on an Apple Newton somehow, and it worked fine. And I don't even know how you would do that, but the idea from the sort of smallest and simplest device all the way up to the desktop, the site should work. So we went that route really to maximize the number of people who could subscribe and have access to the site. And since then, we've really been optimizing it, learning. We're working now to try to bring Boston.com, which is our advertiser-supported portal, into a responsive framework. And that brings the challenges of needing advertising to be more responsive, which it really isn't right now. But there's some promise and some new things coming in that area. I think that'll be really interesting, especially along the areas of native advertising and sort of unique positions. So we're looking at making Boston.com a responsive site as well. And then, as Richard said, we're there still is a place for native applications, and so for BostonGlobe.com, we're a month or two away from launching a native app on the iPhone for the Globe. That instead of just having a newspaper or a news site that where its content is available in the app, we're trying to take advantage of the unique things you can do within a native app in that case. So some features around customization and things like that you just couldn't really do quite as well in the browser. So we tried to really take advantage of native apps for what they do best. So there's, as Richard said, there's still a place for that, and having access to the to the user's credit card and the ability to be found in the store is still something that's really, really important.
Interesting. So really, like looking at what can be better about native versus web, and tailoring the different experiences to those things, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
I mean, I think
did you have no, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, we have a site that works great on all devices, so we had to figure out what would be better in a native app on the iPhone. So it's those features that we really focused on.
So did you find, like, you guys? I think like I said at the top, you guys were really ahead, I think, of the curve on Boston Globe. Was it like 1.5 years ago you launched it, right? Is that?
It was, yes.
I think there's a lot of people trying to just still get there. I think you guys are really ahead. Was part of it because it was new, you didn't have to go figure out how to take this thing in this database and all this stuff that already existed and reshuffle that, and B, it sounds like you didn't have to deal with as many ads or advertising because it was supposed to be subscriber supported.
Yeah, those were two really big factors that made it possible. Is that it was a new site. It wasn't meant to be purely an advertising driven product. And we were fortunate to be in Boston, where some of the real thought leaders on responsive web were. So the Filament Group was really out front in terms of the ideas of progressive enhancement and jQuery libraries that made this happen. And then Ethan Marcotte, who kind of coined the term, it lives in Boston and worked on our project. So he was able to really prove it out in a big way on the Boston Globe project. So we were just sort of everything converged in the Boston area for this to happen. So it was a good time.
Cool. And Richard, I know you guys recently launched you were talking about L'Oreal, and you also did the Nike ID site, right? Which is also responsive and works across all platforms, browsers, screens, etc. Correct?
Yes, absolutely. So the L'Oreal work is responsive, and the Nike ID work, which recently launched, is also available within the browser on the mobile device as well as on the tablet and through the desktop browser. I think the one thing that we're starting to see more of these days, we're starting to see more advanced experiences being developed within the mobile browser, and I think nowadays brands and agencies do have a legitimate choice in terms of choosing between native apps and the browser. I think there are still things, though, that need to absolutely be developed as native applications. You know, in our conversation before this Google Plus Hangout, you know, we briefly talked about the Nike Plus FuelBand project. FuelBand as a product, you know, that was something that had to be developed as a native application experience, just because the application talks to the FuelBand, and that's done through, you know, the Bluetooth standard that a lot of people are using these days. And you know, that type of connection is just not possible through the mobile browser today. Maybe somewhere down the line in the future, the browser continues to get more and more sophisticated, that it could actually talk to some of the native features on the handset, but it's not quite there yet. But in terms of what's happening in the mobile browsers, it's pretty phenomenal. You know, the Boston Globe stuff was, I would say, probably one of the industry, it was held up as one of the industry inspirations for a lot of agencies out there. So great work to you guys over in Boston. And you know, if you look at some of the stuff that's happening on the Nike ID HTML5 builder that's out there, you know, if you just go and you log on and you start playing around with the customization tool, you know, you would, it's hard to imagine that type of experience being possible in the browser, you know, 2 years ago. You know, the only way you would have been able to get that done was through a native app. So we're really starting to see the browser push forward in terms of its capabilities.
Yeah. So it sounds. I mean, I think one obvious thing, which you guys both touched on, is that people are visiting these sites and experiences from so many different types of devices that it's obviously super important that it works with all of them. That's pretty obvious, right? And the question I had sort of beyond that is, we see a lot of people, and either it's brands or content or whatever it may be, putting emphasis on the need for social as a distribution, as a way of launching something, getting out there, getting it shared. Does the HTML versus app, then one of those become an advantage or disadvantage for sort of leaning on social as a way of distributing? Is it not? Is it sort of equal among both of those, or either of you?
Yeah, I would say that it all depends on how you design the experience, right? So if you think of, let's just use a very simple example, you know, the Instagram iPhone app.
Sure.
It's fantastic from a social standpoint because of some of the functions that are baked into the app. Things like the push notifications really drive social engagement. The simplicity of the interface, where people could go in and very quickly comment and like. Those are all extremely well-designed features that draw people back from a social engagement standpoint. So if you are actually going to weave in social features and functionality into a mobile browser experience, you really have to think about how you're designing it, how it feeds into the various social platforms like Facebook and Twitter, and how those platforms feed back into the mobile browser experience.
Right.
So I wouldn't say one is better than the other in terms of integrating social. I think whoever the strategist is or the designer / technologist is on the project, they really have to think about creating features that drive engagement, and they create those features in a way that are designed in an extremely simple and useful way. So I can't argue one over the other. I think you just have to do it well in either case.
Right. What about you, Jeff? Are you how are you guys seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think exactly the same way. You know, I think the sharing and the social aspects of the Boston Globe site and the responsive framework, you know, all worked fine. I think, you know, more even the place where we saw even more advantage with the responsive web was in search. So, you know, the fact that you have one URL for each page that works on every device means you don't have all your content split across a whole bunch of different URLs, and you know, Google and search engines can really easily index it. So we saw we just saw from the beginning a really nice bump from you know, from Google and from search engines because of that. And I think Google later came out and said, you know, responsive web design was the sort of, you know, the best practice for search engine optimization, which was great. And you just get all that search power and juice focused in on a single URL, and no matter what device you're on, it's going to work. So that, I think, was a bigger advantage on the responsive side for us.
Interesting. Have either of you seen really good integration between mobile browser and native apps? in terms of sharing. I mean, it's a pretty complicated thing, I think, to do well throughout the experience, right? So
Yeah,
really good. Your example, Richard, of the Instagram. So really good, sort of in and out of Instagram into mobile web and back and forth.
Yeah, no, I think the Instagram example was different. I think one good example of mobile into social. I'll just use this example because the team at RJ worked on it. Is the Nike Plus GPS app.
Right.
I think when you actually go for a run, what the application does is it'll post into your social feeds that you're going out for a run, and if someone within your social circles sees that posting within your newsfeed, and if they actually like or comment on the run, what you get back in return in real time through the application is a virtual cheer. Right. So as you're running in your headphones, you will actually hear a cheer through your headphones. So I think that's been a really nice integration of a mobile application with social. And it's actually using social in a way where it enhances your experience within the mobile app. So when you hear that virtual cheer, it actually helps motivate you and push you along in whatever type of run you're participating in. So I would say that's been a pretty good example of mobile.
I agree. Are we? So why are we seeing more of that? Is that technically really challenging to do, or is it just sort of conceptually people haven't really pushed that too far yet?
I would say that brands and agencies are moving in that direction. I think at this point, from where I sit, anything that we work on these days, whether it's a mobile website, a mobile app, a website, or a retail experience, we're always thinking about how do we integrate social into the experience, how do we create content and objects that consumers would want to share out into their feeds. And part of why we want to do that is to drive engagement with the consumers we're trying to reach, but then at the same time, from a brand standpoint, it really helps to drive earned media around the brand. So nowadays, everything we touch has to have a social component to it, and it's the challenge is thinking what is the right social feature or social experience to weave into whatever type of creative we're thinking about.
Right. Jeff, you guys are working on a bunch of new social products, from what I understand. Is there any you can share?
Yeah, a few things. We've been working with social sentiment analysis. So when you look at our role as information providers, we think part of it is to help make sense of what's going on in social media, what people are posting, what people are saying. So we try to do that from a city perspective. So and a couple examples that are not local but that have run recently. There we go. We're back.
Okay, we're back.
Back in. There we go.
All right.
Hey, welcome back, guys.
Sorry about that.
So yeah, no problem. So I was just talking about Brand Bull. So we worked with Mullen on this project, and we took it over this year, which was a sentiment analysis of the during the Super Bowl. So basically, as the ads ran during the Super Bowl, we had people input keywords around those ads and identifying words and tags, and then analyze the Twitter fire hose for comments and for what people were saying, and created at the end sort of a winner in terms of sentiment from the Super Bowl ads. So that that's something that we've been working on, is looking at social sentiment. And then we're working on.
Were people doing that you were just asking them to use Twitter as a place to say it with a hashtag, and you were just trying to analyze all the words, or?
Yeah, well, we had a hashtag which was Brand Bull, but we also were looking at all tweets that mentioned that commercial. So so we would put in words into the database so that we could find behind the mentions of the ad, so there'd be characteristics of the ad and things like that, so we could find them without the hashtag, and then they would run sentiment analysis on it to see whether it was positive or negative, and then it was a combination of volume and sentiment that created a score at the end of the night, and I think it was I'm trying to remember the winner. I think it was the Taco Bell commercial that won the most sentiment on Twitter, the best sentiment on Twitter. So it's things like that, and we're playing them locally as well. So some of our team
and Bostonians, basically, right? Probably.
Yeah, actually that was national. Yeah. So we were looking everywhere. Now we could have limited it locally. So that's something we're looking to do in some other projects, like restaurants. So being able to we've been looking at Instagram and photos and posts, and we've started to look to see, we can actually look at restaurants across Boston and the related emojis that are posted along with photos of restaurants. So you can actually browse restaurants by their emojis and things like that. All this data is flowing into in social media about our area, and it's just about trying to help people make sense of that. So, so there are some interesting things that we're working on to try to do that in the local market.
That's interesting. That seems also less gameable than fake reviews on Yelp.
Yeah, I think we think so. And there are some interesting things that you can do with photo analysis, and in terms of the types of things people are posting photos on, when they post them, and when they check in, because Instagram uses Foursquare's database, we can kind of relate all these things back to each other and provide a view of a restaurant that you wouldn't necessarily get from just Yelp or just from the Globe or just from one source.
Interesting. Richard, I'd love to just chat briefly a little bit about FuelBand. I mean, it's such a success last year and continues to be. How important do you feel like the mobile social platform was to the launch, I guess? I mean, I know there was obviously awareness everywhere, but there was also something about walking around and seeing people in meetings with them on, and sharing their app stats with each other, sort of personally, and then obviously that getting published to Twitter and that kind of thing too. That really it felt like, as an outsider, really drove a lot of awareness for it.
Yeah, there's definitely a bit of gaming mechanics baked into the user experience. I think as a user, one of the things that I really enjoy about the app is being able to go to the leaderboard and see on a daily basis how my friends are doing in terms of their fuel points, and in a way that does motivate me as a user.
Right.
I mean, if you look at how the application was designed, it does borrow from other competitive gaming experiences. I'm also a big fantasy sports player as well, and just being able to check my score and my progress and my status against my friends is that additional social motivation that I think has made the application fairly successful. I think this is a type of technique that we see a lot of brands and agencies trying to jump on. I think having some type of feature that gets people to come back on an ongoing basis is definitely where a lot of these social platforms are heading. Just because in terms of having users stay interested, you really have to develop features that get them to a place where they're motivated to use your application. And FuelBand and some of the other health tracking apps out there, if you do use them, eventually you get to a point where you are becoming more physical. You are hopefully becoming healthier as well, because you are becoming more active as a consumer. So yeah, I mean, I would encourage you, if you have it, download the app, use it, and play with it, and enjoy the leaderboard.
Yeah. Jeff, are you seeing a lot of those just rabid Bostonians competing for more FuelBand points?
We haven't actually done that yet, but it would be a great idea to have a Boston leaderboard up on Boston.com. We should probably do that, and especially with the Boston Marathon coming here in a month, about a month, it would be great to see what happens then. So if we could get access to the data from a local standpoint, it would be that would be really cool. So I could see a regional leaderboard like that being pretty interesting.
We should telegraph to the hangout, I guess. I think you had before we go. I think there was one other, Jeff. There was one other thing you guys were working on. I think like one other social product we had talked about earlier, I believe.
Yeah. Well, one thing we publish out a lot of content through social media, and our goal there really is to get the news out, let our journalists connect with people directly. We're getting better and better at that. So we're using tools now that actually on a real-time basis will tell our editors when the best time is to tweet something, based on when something like that, when people respond to content like that, time of day, things like that. So so we're starting to get these sort of robot editors helping us decide when to push things out into social media, and it sort of optimizes the timing, it optimizes the messaging, so that it gets the most amount of shares and virality. So I think for us it's about really just getting better at finding the right way to be authentic in each social network, but also to do it in the right way at the right time.
Right. I mean, at the end of the day, it is really just kind of it sounds so modern, but it's actually kind of just an old school programming technique, right? It's like, people watch sitcoms from like 8 to 9, and then at 10 o'clock is like heavy drama or like morning shows. Right? It's sort of the same concept, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's just looking at the data and what the system we use, that's called Visual Revenue. What it does for us is it tells us that a certain type of content should be tweeted at this time, because in the last 2 weeks, content like this has gotten more clicks or more likes or more retweets, things like that. So, it can be probably pretty different across different websites, but there are those trends that underlie all that social sharing that can be used, to figure out what to do, when to do it next time, and what to do next time.
Very cool. All right. Well, I want to thank you guys both for joining. It's been a good hangout. Super interesting stuff. I definitely encourage people who are watching and who will watch to check out, to visit and look at both of your guys' work. Obviously, the RJ site has lots of great stuff on it, and certainly if you do not have a FuelBand, what are you waiting for? And obviously for those really at the forefront of web design, want some inspiration, have not been to BostonGlobe.com, go. So thanks so much, you guys both, for joining us, and hope we get to talk to you again soon.
Great.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Bye.